All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this installment of Good as a Concert. My name is Jim Payne. I'm hosting the first half. Eleanor Dawson will be your host for the second half. We're really pleased to see such a fine crowd out here on the 1st of March, and as you know, this concert has been entitled Songs to Get Us Through the Long and Hungry Month of March. And the month of March has often been referred to in Newfoundland folklore and songs as a long and hungry month, but we're not going to dwell on the long and hungry part of it. We're talking about songs that gets us through it. So I'm going to introduce the folks here on the stage. Right on my far left here, on your far right, is Jenna Maloney, a bilingual singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist from St. John's, who has performed in various festivals and shows around Newfoundland and Labrador, including the Newfoundland and Labrador Folk Festival, Victoria Park Lantern Festival, George Street Festival, Music NL Week. She's got a long list of gigs to her credit. And she's released a debut Christmas single a couple of years ago called Evergreen, lovely song. She's also been part of multiple groups, most notably the two-time Music NL award-winning Francophone duo Port-au-Poutine. So we're really pleased to have Jenna with us tonight. Matthew Byrne is back for, I think, a second round with Good as a Concert, isn't it? Yeah, it's been a year or more since Matthew's been part of the show, but always a pleasure to have him. He's just released his fourth studio album called Stealing Time. Not released yet, I don't think, is it?
No. When I gave you that bio, it was the plans since have changed slightly.
But so keep an eye out for that when it comes out. It was recorded in Sheffield, UK, United Kingdom, where he teamed up with a whole bunch of fantastic musicians from the UK. And Matthew, of course, is he comes from folk music royalty here in Newfoundland anyway, and he's been really prominent over the past few years as a kind of a younger performer coming forward and picking up on a lot, especially the old ballads that don't get sung very much, which is really what this event, this Good as a Concert series is all about, is to give people, first of all, the chance for people like you to hear a lot of rarely heard songs, but also for singers on the stage to sing songs that they don't get a chance to sing very often either. And finally, I've got a one line here that says, Anita Best is a traditional singer and storyteller from Maraschino Placentia Bay. And
that's good.
And I told Anita that I was going to have to say more than that because, I have to try to do her justice somehow. But Anita really was in the forefront of the revival of interest in Newfoundland and Labrador folk music that really got underway sort of in the early to mid 70s. And she's been a huge part of it ever since, not just as a performer, but as somebody who's getting the songs out there. She's published a book of folk songs called Come and I Will Sing You a few years ago, along with Pamela Morgan and Genevieve Lear and Ellie Cohen. Some fantastic songs, and still a great resource for singers in Newfoundland who want to get back to some of these early songs.
Thank you.
So she's, as I say, she's been still in the forefront, really, of making sure that these songs are still heard, still sung, and giving us sort of the history, our own history in Newfoundland and Labrador folk music. So we're really, really pleased, of course, as always, to have Anita with us here tonight. So maybe I'll ask you to start.
Okay.
What do you think?
All right. Well, I picked a couple of themes, when March is, of course, International Women's Month, I think. We should be celebrating that, but not only, the sealers are out in March, the bulbs start coming up somewhere in March, maybe not here in St. John's, but somewhere. Anyhow, they're going to come up at some point or another. So I thought maybe I'll start off with a woman's song. And I learned this from Pius Power, my father-in-law, and it's called The Female Pirate, a song about a woman who took charge when she had to. As we were a-sailing down on the Spanish shore, where the drums they do beat and the cannons loud do roar, I spied a lofty admiral ship come plowing o'er the main, and it caused us for to hoist up our topsails again. Now come boys, let us be loyal, and come boys, let us be true. To fight the Spanish army is what we'll have to do. And we'll very soon o'ertake them while on the ocean wide, and without salutation we'll give them the first broadside. Now it was broadside and broadside these two vessels went, for to sink one another it was their full intent. On the very second broadside, our captain he was slain, but a damsel jumped up in his place to take command again. For quarter, these Spanish lads did cry. You've had your best of quarter, bold Ronnie made reply. You have had the best of quarter that I can you afford. You must fight, strike, and die, me boys, or jump overboard. Well, we fought those brave heroes for 8 long hours or more, till we scarcely had a man aboard could bring our ship to. And we scarcely had a man aboard could fire off a gun, and the blood from off her decks through her scuppers it did run. Well, now the battle is over and we'll drink a glass of wine. You can drink to your true love and I will drink to mine. Here's a health unto that damsel, bright lassie of fame. It was boldly that she fought in the Union by name.
Well done.
Thank you.
I guess we're going in this direction now.
Sure.
I'm going to do one that when I recorded it, I did a kind of a instrumentalized version of it and had a picked up the tempo and had some wonderful players on it. But like a lot of those songs, I love doing it that way, but also going back to the way I originally sang it and originally learned it, which is unaccompanied a cappella. And this is one that I learned from Mom. And she told me that it came from my great uncle John Hollett from Spencer's Cove, and he was not somebody I knew, but I remember I was going through some stuff in the Mon Folklore Archive because I knew that Wilf Wareham had also done a field recording of Great Uncle John singing it, and all Wilf said in his little notes there were this was one of John and the boys' favorite drinking songs, and so even that gives you a little something to create more of a picture of how it might have been sung. Anyway, it's a song called Bold Nelson. And it comes from the Battle of Trafalgar when Lord Horatio Nelson led the British fleet to victory over France and Spain, but he died in doing so. He died at the peak of battle and went down, for that very reason, went down as even more of a hero and was eulogized in song and story for years and years. And this is one of those songs. And it has a very straightforward, simple one-line chorus, which is simply, "And it's oh my British boys." And so when you get that, you can join me.
I wonder why we're thinking about battle songs these days.
I wonder why we're thinking of battle songs. Yeah. Well, if we get political, we'll never go back. So geez, the month of March is long enough without that shit going on. Come all ye sons of Britannia, and with a loud hooray, come and join your song in chorus, for to sing Britannia's praise. Upon the victory of the Nile, once more we'll make Britannia smile. Another victory of the Nile, it's oh my British boys. 'Twas on October 21, and glorious was the day when the combined fleet of France and Spain, they lay off Cadiz Bay. Their number being 33, with one bold Nelson doth agree. There's 27 this day for me, it's oh my British boys. We formed a line of battle where great guns tremendous go. Our fleet in number 27, it shook the Spanish shore. Our captain on his bridge so high, he loudly unto us did cry, saying, today we'll conquer or we'll die. It's oh my British boys. We formed a line of battle where we struck our fatal blow. Some ships were sent onto the air, and more were sent below. When victory lay on our side, a musket ball his life destroyed. And 'twas in the midst of glory he died. It's oh my British boys. And now our hero's lying there to draw his final breath, praying for his nation's glory to the moment of his death. Sing now, my boys, the race is run, and today will be our setting sun. God's providence, it must be done. It's oh my British boys. God's providence, it must be done. It's oh my British boys. Beautiful singing.
Well
Thank you.
done.
I mentioned that Gary couldn't be with us, and Gary was going to be our resident storyteller tonight, but since he's not here, I guess I'll throw in a story.
That would be
I was
great.
deputed in the back room there to throw in a story, and it's a story about a boat, a particular kind of boat. And you know, we've used a lot of different kinds of Newfoundland and Labrador over the years in the fishery and so on, going back to, you know, first of all, just the indigenous craft that was here long before the Europeans came, but everything from the chalupas of the Basques in Red Bay to the schooners that brought John Cabot and all the rest of the banking schooners and the trap skiffs, right up to the longliners and factory freezer trawlers and so on. But when I was growing up, I grew up on the western side of Notre Dame Bay, and unlike a lot of the rest of the province, in the kind of the bays around the rest of Newfoundland, you know, you can see way out into the wide open ocean when you look out to sea, like say from St. John's. First time I came to St. John's, went to Signal Hill, I looked out and thought, where do people go in boat? Right? Because you couldn't see any place for them to go. But where I grew up, there's lots of islands and coves and everything. There's always a secluded patch, a beach somewhere. But because of that, most of the fishermen out that way were inshore fishermen. And they didn't have to go out into the wide open ocean, you know, like the deep sea fishermen do to catch fish. So people could go out, and they usually just left in the morning and were back home again at night. And they operate out of a little rowboat called a punt. And, you know, so they could row out to their lobster pots or their salmon nets or their herring nets and so on. And consequently then, because we're on the northeast coast, the harbors and everything will all freeze up, usually right around Christmas time. So the fishery was shut down, you know, from then often up until May month or later sometimes before navigation opened again. Because outside of the harbor's freezing up, then the pack ice had come down from the north around February and so on and block everything up. And so then when, people would haul their punts up in the beach in the fall of the year and wait till the winter to pass, and then they'd go down and perhaps put a lick of paint on their punt and caulk it up with a bit more oakum, and they're all ready to go fishing again. And as was always customary in Newfoundland in the old days, if a family was a fishing family and they had sons, their sons would go into the fishery with their father. And when their father would retire from the fishery, well, his sons would take over his fishing enterprise, including his stage and his nets and his lobster pots and all the other accoutrements involved in the fishery, and of course, including his punt. And there was just such a family that lived right fair across the harbor from where I grew up. In fact, we always used to love it when the harbor froze up, because myself and my sister and two brothers, we lived the farthest away from the school. And so when the harbor froze up, we could always take a shortcut across the ice. And we would come ashore on the other side of the harbor, right where this family had their fishing premises. They had 3 sons, all of whom went into the fishery with their father. And when their father retired from the fishery, well, these 3 sons took over his fishing enterprise. And one spring, the 3 boys went down to the beach to get their punt ready to go fishing. And they realized that the ice coming in and out, it was a miserable old winter, so the ice was in and out of the bay and the harbor a dozen times. Great big chunks of it hove up into the beach. And when they examined their punt this particular spring, they realized that it really wasn't seaworthy enough to be going fishing in this year. It had got too much damage over the course of the winter. So they figured that in order to prosecute the fishery this particular year, they were going to have to go up in the woods and cut some timbers and drag them out into the beach so they could build themselves a new punt. So the oldest boy, whose name was Tom, goes up to his mother and he says, "Mother," he says, "bake us up some lassie buns," he said, "because I'm going up in the country tomorrow," he said, "to cut a few timbers for his punt, for a new punt." So his mother baked up the buns for him. And the next morning, off goes Tom with these buns in his grub bag over his back, his axe in his hand. And when he got up in the woods to a place where he knew it was a good spot for cutting timbers, he was feeling a bit tired and a bit hungry. So he lit the fire and he sat down and boiled his kettle. And as soon as when he finished his lunch, he cracked into the lassie buns that his mother had baked up for him the night before. When he finished his lassie buns, he doubted his fire and he put away his things in his grub bag. But just before he put them away, out of the woods comes this old witch. And she asked Tom for a bun. "How you getting our bun here?" said Tom. "I only got enough for myself." "Oh, that's all right, Tom," said the witch. "That's all right," she said. "You'll get your reward," she said. So the old witch went on back in the woods again. And Tom put away, he doubted his fire, he put away his stuff in his grub bag and he picked up his axe to go cut his timber. But every time Tom's axe would strike a tree, Tom would bring up standing, because every single tree in the forest was made of solid iron. And Tom had to go home without any timbers for his punt. So he told his younger brother Bill about how the witch come out of the woods and put a spell on him. And Bill said, "Hey, go on with you, Tom." He said, "I'll go up to the country tomorrow." He said, "I bet you," he said, "I'll be able to bring home some timbers for a punt," he said. So Bill goes off to his mother. "Mother," he says, "bake us up some lassie buns," he said, "because I'm going up in the country tomorrow to cut some timbers for a punt." So his mother baked up the buns for him. And the next morning, off goes Bill, buns in the bag, axe in his hand. And sure enough, as soon as ever Bill sat down to have his lunch, out of the woods comes this old witch, and she asked Bill for a bun. "How you getting our bun here?" said Bill. "I only got enough for myself." "Oh, that's all right, Bill," said the witch. "That's all right," she said. "You get your reward," she said. So the old witch went on back in the woods again. And when Bill finished his lunch, he doubted his fire, he put away his things in his grub bag, and he picked up his axe to go cut his timbers. But every time Bill's axe would strike a tree, there were shards of glass went flying everywhere, because every single tree in the forest was made of glass. And Bill had to go home without any timbers for his punt. So he told his younger brother Jack about how the witch come out of the woods and put a spell on him. And Jack said, "I'll go on with you boys," he said. "Nothing wrong with you," he says, "only you're too lazy to cut a few timbers for a punt," he says. "I'll go up in the country tomorrow," he says. "I guarantee you," he says, "I won't be coming back until I got timbers for a punt." So Jack goes off to his mother. "Mother," he says, "bake us up some lassie buns," he said, "because I'm going up in the country tomorrow to cut some timbers for a punt." So his mother baked up the buns for him. And the next morning off goes Jack, proud as punch, axe in his hand, buns in his grub bag over his back. And sure enough, as soon as ever Jack sat down to have his lunch, out of the woods comes the old witch, and she asked Jack for a bun. "Sure," said Jack. "You can have two if you want some." So the old witch sat down and had a lunch with Jack. And while they were polishing off the lassie buns now that Jack's mother had baked up from the night before, the old witch asked Jack what he come up in the country for. And Jack said, "Well, mate," he said, "the ice is after going out of the harbour now," he said. "Me and me brothers," he said, "are trying to get ready to go fishing again this spring," he said, "but the ice got our old punt all beat up the winter," he said. "So I come up here in the country," he said, "to cut a few timbers," he said, we can build a new punt to go fishing in again this spring." And the witch said, "Sir Jack, my son, that's all right," she said. "You haven't got to worry about the like of that," she said. I'll look after that for you." She said, "Jack," she said, "I'll tell you what to do now," she said. Go up in the woods," she said, "and cut me a timber. And when you comes back," she said, "I'll have your punt all timbered out for you." So Jack took his axe and he goes off and he cut a timber. And when he comes back, sure enough, here's the punt all timbered out in front of him. And the witch said, "Jack," she said, "go up there now," she said, "and cut me a plank stick." And she said, "When you comes back," she said, "I'll have your punt all planked out for you too." And Jack goes off and he cuts a plank stick. And when he comes back, here's the punt all planked out for him. And Jack looks at the punt, he says, "Beautiful punt," he said. "Witch, beautiful punt." But he said, "Now how am I going to paint her?" "Oh, don't worry about that, Jack, my son," said the witch. And she reached into her pocket and she hauled out this great big paintbrush. My son, what a paintbrush. She said, "Jack," she said, "you take this paintbrush now," she said, "and you give your punt a smear up one side," she said, "and a smear down the other, and that punt," she said, "will be 7 different colors." Well, Jack took the paintbrush, he smeared her up one side, he smeared her down the other, and sure enough, that punt was 7 pretty colors, the most beautiful punt that Jack ever laid eyes on. So Jack looked at the punt, he said, "Fantastic job," he said, "witch, fantastic job." But now he said, "Here we are," he said, "way up in the woods," he said. "There's not a drop of water in sight. How am I supposed to get me punt out of this place?" And the witch said, "Oh, Jack, my son, don't worry about that," she said. "I'll tell you what to do now," she said. "You get aboard of your punt now," she said, "and I'll tell you how she works." So Jack jumped into the punt. He sat down on the tot, and the witch said, "Now, Jack, my son," she said, "is like this," she said. "If you wants to go anywhere in this punt," she said, "all you got to do is say the magic word, fly." And she said, "This punt," she said, "will take you anywhere in the world you wants to go." And she said, "And if you wants to stop somewhere," she said, "all you got to do is say the magic word, pitch." And she said, "That punt," she said, "will land you anywhere you wants to." Well, Jack was anxious to get back home to see his brothers so they could start their fishing season, so he shouted at the top of his head, "Fly!" he said. Oh, the punt started to rock back and forth on the ground. Up she comes, up off the ground, up over the witch's head and out of sight. Jack was soaring along, having the time of his life. By and by, once he figured he must be getting pretty close to home now. So he said, "Pitch," he said. Down she comes, sir, as smooth a landing as ever you could imagine. Now, Jack wasn't on the ground in that punt very long before he realized he wasn't on the northeast coast of Newfoundland anymore after all. He was after going all the way across the Atlantic Ocean and landed in England. And the very first person that Jack laid eyes on when he got out of his punt in England was the king's daughter. And pretty soon, the princess took an awful shine to Jack. And it wasn't very long after that before they decided they were going to get married. Now, the king didn't mind, you know. Oh, no. The king was awful tickled with Jack for having such a beautiful punt. But as the wedding day approached, Jack goes up to the princess. He says, "You know, princess," he said, "before we can get married," he said, "I'm going to have to go home and see me brothers," he said, "because they must be getting awful uneasy about me by now." So the princess said, yes, Jack, my darling. She said, you go back and see your family, she said, and when you're ready, you come back and we will be married. So Jack jumped back aboard of the punt. He shouted, fly! And in a twinkling, he was back on the coast of Newfoundland. Well, now Jack brought that beautiful multicolored punt in over the horizon. First thing he sees, there's Bill and Tom still standing there on the beach waiting for Jack to come out of the woods with a few timbers so they could build a punt. And when Jack brought that punt into the cove, well, the two brothers could hardly believe their eyes. And they became extremely envious of Jack. And they said, well, after Jack told them the story about how the witch had built the punt, and he was, after being to England, he was going to marry the princess and become a wealthy man. Well, the two brothers got quite envious. And he said, well, you know, perhaps if we could travel the world, we could marry a beautiful princess and become wealthy men too. So they decided to ask Jack for a loan of his punt. And Jack, being an easygoing sort of fellow, said, yes, boy. He said, sure. He said, you can have a loan of me punt, he said. So the two brothers jumped into the punt. How does she work, Jack? How does she work? Jack said, well, boys, he said, no. He said, it's like this, he said. If he wants to go somewhere in this punt, he said, all you got to do is say the magic word, fly. Well, the two brothers shouted at the top of their voices, fly, they said. Well, the punt rocked back and forth on the ground. Up she comes, up off the ground, up over Jack's head and off into the clouds and out of sight. And boys, I guess they're flying yet. Because these two brothers were that anxious to get going, they never waited for Jack to tell them the magic word, pitch. So one of these fine, clear nights now, you see something going across the sky, you don't know what it is? Well, that's probably Bill and Tom up there in Jack's magic punt trying to figure out a way to get that back down on the ground. Now, Jack waited in the beach a long time for his two brothers to come back with that punt because he was anxious to go back to England and marry the princess. But they never came back. Now, fortunately, the princess was a woman of much greater resources than Jack. So she came to Newfoundland. And they got married out here on the northeast coast. They had the biggest kind of a dance, my son. They laid on a huge feast, which they spread out on a great big tin table. But the tin table bended, so my story is ended. Now, if the table had been stronger, my story would have been longer. But if they don't have good luck, then may all ye. That's Jack and the Magic Punt.
Well done, Jim. Well done. Well done yourself. That's fantastic.
So yeah, Jack and the Magic Punt. We need a dealership open in St. John's.
In the days of no fact checking, you're going to get away with that.
Magicpunt.com.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to sing you a song that Kenneth Peacock heard from Annie Walters out in Rocky Harbour. Her father was the lighthouse keeper, and he was Mr. Young. She was a Young before she married Mr. Walters. And he went out there in 1958-59. He camped in her back garden, and he got a lot of songs from her. So this is one of them. It's of a young maiden who lived all alone. She lived all alone on the shore, oh. There was nothing she could find for to comfort her mind, but to roam all alone on the shore, 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 but to roam all alone on the shore. 'Tis of a young captain who sailed the salt sea. Let the winds blow high and blow low, low. I will die, this young captain did cry, if I can't have that maid on the shore, 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 if I can't have that maid on the shore. I have lots of silver, I have lots of gold, I have lots of costly ware, oh. I'll divide with my jolly ship's crew, if they'll row me that maid from the shore, 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 if they'll row me that maid from the shore. Now after long persuasion, they got her on board. Let the winds blow high and blow low, low. Where they placed her a chair in his cabin below. Here's adieu to all sorrow and care, care, care. Here's adieu to all sorrow and care. She sat herself down in his cabin below. Let the winds blow high and blow low, low. Where she sang so sweet, so neat and complete. She sang captain and sailors to sleep, sleep, sleep. She sang captain and sailors to sleep. Then she robbed them of silver, she robbed them of gold. She robbed them of costly ware-o. And she stole his broadsword, which she used for an oar, and she paddled her way to the shore, shore, shore. And she paddled her way to the shore. Now were my men crazy, or were my men drunk? Or were my men sunk in despair, oh? For to let her go away with her beauty so gay, and to roam all alone on the shore, 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 and to roam all alone on the shore. Your men were not crazy, your men were not drunk, your men were not sunk in despair, oh. I deluded your sailors as well as yourself. I'm a maid once again on the shore, shore, shore. I'm a maid once again on the shore.
Lovely. Great song. I'm going to do a song that I recently recorded on the album that I have coming out soon, and most of my recordings have primarily been traditional songs, but on every recording there's a kind of a song that is a important. A nod to somebody who's an important part of my record collection. I'm a big fan of Scottish songwriter and folk singer Archie Fisher, and my brother and I both have been singing this song for years. And I decided to do a version of it when I was over recording this time around. And it's a beautiful song of Archie's called Merry England. Waiting on a station platform for a change of trains. Seems whenever I'm in Preston that it always rains. Another day for moving on to play another town. I've no way of knowing where tonight I lay me down. Merry England, though your heart is warm, your hands are cold, and I'd like to think I'm growing up as well as growing old. It's been weeks since I've been smiled on by a face I knew, and I started thinking every pretty woman looked like you. Blackpool in December found me wandering forlorn, feeling what a child felt like when the carnival had gone. Can't gain on the roundabout or lose upon the swing. Too late for the summer days and early for the spring.
Merry England, though your heart is warm, your hands are cold, and I'd like to think I'm growing up as well as growing old. It's been weeks since I've been smiled on by a face I knew, and I started thinking every pretty woman looked like you. Looked like you. You would travel round beside me in a song, and having you to come back home to helped me get along. It's been weeks since I've been smiled on by a face I knew, and I started thinking every pretty woman looked like you.
Lovely.
Thank you.
So as a solo artist, I have a tendency to hide behind my guitar. And then I recently started playing fiddle a whole lot more, which is definitely a lot more vulnerable, but I can do something even more vulnerable, and I'm not gonna use any of it. Been a long time since I've sang a cappella, but we're gonna give it a try.
I'm pretty sure you'll be all right.
We're gonna see. So I tried to pick songs for tonight that meant something to me, and some of them are definitely super well known, but I try and do it in a way that maybe isn't so familiar. So I'm gonna do a song that I've been singing since I was very, very small, and I learned this one from my dad. And it's definitely super well known. It's called The Old Polina. But I'm gonna play a trick on you all. Watch this. C'étaient de grands baleiniers qui naviguaient de Dundee, pilotés par des marins qui étaient braves et hardis. En tirant les voiles vers l'ouest, le voyage a commencé. On a vogué comme une chanson sur un vaillant baleinier. Le second dimanche matin d'un long voyage sans repos, on triangule un grand surroi qui emporta notre bateau. Il emporta notre dunette et nos chandeliers aussi. Mais c'est ainsi que les rafales emportèrent notre gâchis, car devant de notre côté, les moteurs à plein gaz. Il n'y a pas d'autres baleiniers qui naviguent les mers du Nord. Rien ne peut battre Paulina, n'essayez point mes enfants. On a vaincu petits et grands de Dundee à Saint-Jean. Art Jackman lève à toi le fair weather à fond train. Et William Guy, le capitaine qui n'avait peur de rien. Et Mullins dans le Husky tenta de prendre les devants. Mais pour battre la Paulina, il faudra bien plus de temps. Car le vent de notre côté, les moteurs à plein gaz. Il n'y a pas d'autres baleiniers qui naviguent les mers du Nord. Rien ne peut battre Paulina, n'essayez point mes enfants. On a vaincu petits et grands de Dundee à Saint-Jean. Il y a la Terra Nova, navire à l'épreuve du temps. Il y a l'Arctique et l'Aurora dont on parle tellement. Il y a le navire postal, la terreur des océans, qui ont tenté de battre Paulina sur un voyage vers Saint-Jean. Car le vent de notre côté, les moteurs à plein gaz. Il n'y a pas d'autres baleiniers qui naviguent les mers du Nord. Rien ne peut battre Paulina, n'essayez point mes enfants. On a vaincu petits et grands de Dundee à Saint-Jean. Mais maintenant à Saint-Jean, où le rhum est à bon prix, on boira pour Captain Guy qui a guidé notre navire. On boira à nos amantes, à nos femmes qui sont si chères. Et ce navire qui tient le cap comme Paulina sait le faire. Car le vent de notre côté, les moteurs à plein gaz. Il n'y a pas d'autres baleiniers qui naviguent les mers du Nord. Rien ne peut battre Paulina, n'essayez point mes enfants. On a vaincu petits et grands de Dundee à Saint-Jean. Thank you.
I'm going to do one that maybe you can join me on, and it's one that MMaP are the people here at Memorial University, Music, Media and Place, and they put out a CD of some field tapes that were done way back in the 60s, and it's called It's Time for Another One. You can buy it from them.
That is outside. They'll be outside at half.
Oh, they'll be outside in a little while, so you can purchase them there. And this one song was sung by Mr. Robert Childs from down around Grohl area in Hermitage Bay. And I'm going to ask Matthew and Jim, and you too, Jenny, if you want to, join me on it. The way it was sung in that community by Mr. Childs was he'd sing a verse and everybody in the room would sing a verse, sing the same verse that he just sang. So he doubled the verses of the song. So we're going to do it that way. And here it goes. It's one of those songs where, you know, in spring the sap starts rising in the trees and, you know, the ice melts and things start flowing and hormones start going everywhere. And this is a story about Sal and Tom. Last Saturday night, as I suppose, Sal stopped up for to iron some clothes to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Last Saturday night, as I suppose, Sal stopped up for to iron some clothes to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. For fear that she might lonesome be, Tom stopped up to her company, be to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. For fear that she might lonesome be, Tom stopped up to her company, be to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Oh, now, says Tom, if it wouldn't for the shame, you and I might play the game to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Oh, now, says Tom, if it wasn't for the shame, you and I might play the game to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Well, now, says Sal, what shame would it be? There's no one here but you and me to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Well, now, says Sal, what shame would it be? There's no one here but you and me to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Well, they both stripped off to their naked skin, into the big bed they jumped into me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Well, they both stripped off to their naked skin, into the big bed they jumped into me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. In they jumped and 'twas a mix, out they jumped and 'twas a fix to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. In they jumped and 'twas a fix, out they jumped and 'twas a fix to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Now her old man woke up with a fright, searching for a candlelight to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Now her old man woke up with a fright, searching for a candlelight to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Down he come to his surprise, Sal's big legs and Sal's fat thighs to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. And down he come to his surprise, Sal's big legs and Sal's fat thighs to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Well, now, says the old man, this can't be. You'll have to marry Sal and take her away to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Well, now, says the old man, this can't be. You'll have to marry Sal and take her away to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Well, now Sal's married, she's living to her ease. She get a big bird when she pleased to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee. Well, now Sal's married, she's living to her ease. She get a big bird when she pleased to me, high whack, fal-a-diddle-a-dee.
It's the only... That's the only traditional song I know with a Sesame Street reference.
Yes, well, okay. But I will say also that MMaP, which is one of the co-sponsors of this series, has an ongoing project where that is being done. And in fact, one of the concert that you did with us last year, Matthew, I think it was last March, it was marking the launch of a website by MMaP that had the McEdward Leach collection from the Atlantic provinces, including Newfoundland and Labrador. And this next song that I'm going to do here, it's actually from Labrador. It's kind of a Labrador version of the Rattling Bog. So that's what I mean when I say, it's another way to sort of pass the long and hungry month, because you can just keep adding things on until next thing you know, the month's gone. Just like that. But it was part of, it turned up in Leach's collection called Folk Songs and Ballads, or maybe it was Ballads and Folk Songs. I'm not sure. But from the lower Labrador coast. And this is one picked up actually when Fergus and I were in Labrador doing a school project, which we've done a lot down there, came across this. So it has a chorus, a great chorus. It goes, I know. Where the green grass grows thereon, and the green grass grows thereon. That's the chorus. It goes like, and the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. So sing that with us now. 2, 3. And the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. Great. On yonder hill there was a fine stump, the finest stump that ever you see. Oh, the stump on the hill, 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 hill. And on that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. On that stump there was a fine stick, the finest stick that ever you see. Oh, the stick and the stump on the hill, 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 hill. On that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. On that stick there was a fine limb, the finest limb that ever you see. Oh, the limb and the stick and the stick and the stump on the hill, 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 hill. On that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. On that limb there was a fine bush, the finest bush that ever you see. Oh, the bush and the limb and the stick and the stick and the stump on the hill, 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 hill. On that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. On that bush there was a fine nest, the finest nest that ever you see. Oh, the nest on the bush and the limb and the stick and the stump on the hill, 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 hill. On that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. On that bush there was a fine nest, the finest nest that ever you see. Oh, the nest on the bush and the limb and the stick and the stump on the hill, 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 hill. On that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. In that nest there was a fine egg, the finest egg that ever you see. Oh, the egg and the nest on the bush and the limb and the stick and the stump on the hill, 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 hill. On that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. In that egg there was a fine yolk, the finest yolk that ever you see. Oh, the yolk and the egg and the nest on the bush and the limb and the stick and the stump on the hill, 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 hill. On that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. From that yolk there come a fine bird, the finest bird that ever you see. Oh, the bird from the yolk and the egg and the nest on the bush and the limb and the stick and the stump on the hill, 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 hill. On that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. On that bird there grows a fine down, the finest down that ever you see. Oh, the down on the bird from the yolk from the egg and the nest on the bush and the limb and the stick and the stump on the hill, 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 hill. On that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. From that ground rose bright feathers, the finest feathers that ever you see. Oh, the feathers from the down from the bird and the yolk and the egg and the nest on the bush and the limb and the stick and the stump on the hill, 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 hill. On that hill the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. Yes, the green grass grows thereon, the green grass grows thereon. The stump.